Today on Built to Last, make no little plans. A prairie in the city.
A prairie house is a long horizontal house just like the prairie.
And a home for a hero.
And it's always very overwhelming to see communities get behind these projects.
It's time for Built to Last. Built to Last is brought to you by the Chicago Regional Council of Carpenters Labor and Management Committee and the Boy Scouts of America Pathway to Adventure Council.
Welcome to Built to Last. I'm Mark Nilsson.
And I'm Monica Pedersen. The skilled hands of the trades construct America's towering skylines and build our communities.
But before any concrete can be poured or nails hammered, structures have to be crafted in someone's imagination.
Chicago burned down in 1871. The city's gone and it needs to be rebuilt. You know, if you were an architect or an engineer, you came to Chicago. The most important architects in Chicago at this time period worked for William LeBaron Jenney, and that included Daniel Burnham, John Root, Louis Sullivan for a very short period in time, and then other men by the name of Holabird and Roach. They all magically showed up and started working for Jenney, who was an engineer. He trained in Paris. He knew metal framing. He knew Eiffel. So he decided to take bridge technology, turn it on end, you get tall buildings.
I think what really drove the skyscrapers going up was the lack of land.
We are sitting on an ancient lake bed, which means there's nothing but clay underneath us. What do you do with clay? You make bricks. More importantly for metal framing, you make terracotta, and that allows you to fireproof the metal frame.
By using the metal, they're able to go vertical rather than going horizontal.
Electricity is new, so how do you design around this new technology? How do you design around reliable elevators? And what should a tall building look like? And that's the big question.
A question that the partnership of John Root and Daniel Burnham explored with a series of tall buildings in Chicago, culminating with the building where they eventually established their offices.
Something to keep in mind is that Daniel Burnham was the business part of that business. He got the jobs. He brought in the clients. And John Root was the design partner. The Rookery is, 12 stories? That doesn't seem terribly tall to us, but it's an incredibly large building. In this particular project, John Root is really magical. He's looking towards the Middle East while designing this building. He's looking at medieval architecture, the heavy masonry, but then you look at all the decoration and it's Middle Eastern.
Rookery building, it's a pretty impressive interior. Again, back then, there wasn't mass production. That took a skilled craftsman that, in reality, he was an artist. And what you see there is art.
Root brought nature inside, framing glorious skylights with ironwork that continued his Middle Eastern motif.
And for him to duplicate that pattern over and over throughout the entire building, that's takes a lot of work. That's pretty impressive.
Louis Sullivan took this approach a step further with the Carson Perry Scott building.
It was mostly masonry, so he wanted the building to really stand out, and what he did was made it ornate looking on the outside by using the metals.
In what's now the iconic ironwork decorations that embellish the building's main entrance, but this wasn't his most impressive commission.
Now, Adler and Sullivan, there's another great partnership. Louis Sullivan is the design partner of this firm, and Sullivan and Adler were really building the tallest buildings in the city at that time. You had big changes in technology going on, and these architects were prepared to experiment.
Businessman Ferdinand Peck commissioned the firm to build a huge mixed-use building containing a 4,300-seat auditorium, hotel, offices, and shops. The massive building had to sit on Chicago's clay soil.
They went right on the soggy soil of, Chicago. They did the calculations, came up with 16 stories, and when they got done, it worked. And when they decided to add 2 more stories to it, they realized it started to settle. So they had to adjust a little bit. But the inside of that being as massive as it is, the acoustics had to be absolutely perfect. Upper floors being the hotel and the office space. So it was quite an undertaking to build that building back then.
Adler and Sullivan had a lot on their plate when this new guy came to town.
Frank Lloyd Wright was from Wisconsin, and at 20 years of age decided to come to the big city. He had heard about Sullivan's reputation, and because of that, he saw an ad in the paper, wanted draftsmen. And Louis Sullivan and Dankmar Adler, his partner, were in the middle of designing the auditorium building. Biggest project, theater, office building, hotel. And needed help. So Wright applied, got hired immediately, and basically ran the office. He signs a contract with Sullivan, a 5-year contract. And Adler and Sullivan are so busy with commercial work that they have all this residential work that needs to be done, and they're handing it off to Wright. And because Wright's training was in residential architecture. So he's doing the clients' homes for them. And then in the evening, because don't forget, Wright's 24 years old. He's having kids. He needs the income. In his house, he converts the bedroom to an office. He was doing work for neighbors and friends. And other architects would say, oh, Mr. Sullivan, you should see these houses. They're very nice. They're very unique. So Sullivan apparently went out to Oak Park. Oh, I love these. Who did this? Who's the architect? Oh, it's Mr. Wright. And suddenly, contract gets torn up and Wright is fired. So in 1893, which is the same time as the World's Fair, now Wright is on his own. He is an independent architect, and he never looks back.
Wright wasn't just an architect. He didn't just design the house. He liked to design everything about it. He viewed the house as an integral whole.
You would have told me 5 years ago that we would have had close to 1,000 people on the street doing good things for the community. I'd have said, I don't know where we're gonna get them from. This is all about changing stuff in the neighborhood where people don't have the wherewithal or the financial resources to do something.
A lot of times you're gonna see somebody actually break down in tears.
The press doesn't cover this. This is something we do because it's the right thing to do.
IBEW Local 134. We give back to the communities where we live and to those who need it most.
Every boy needs a foundation he can stand on, to embrace opportunity, to overcome obstacles. Because this is the time to equip a boy with what he needs for where he's going. And where he's going is anywhere he wants.
Keeping restaurants and hotels up to date with the latest design trends is a constant challenge. Finding qualified contractors isn't at finishingchicago.com. We work with top designers and general contractors who use the latest painting, drywall finishing, and wall covering techniques in Chicagoland's premier hotels and restaurants. The hospitality industry relies on finishingchicago.com as its free resource to find quality finishing contractors. For a great finish, start with finishingchicago.com.
Frank Lloyd Wright discovered uncharted creative territory in the world of architecture. A national landmark, the Roby House, is a wonderful representation of Wright's imaginative approach. In 1908, Frederick Roby built his wife a home, and he hired Frank Lloyd Wright to design it. Just after the family moved in, Roby's father died, leaving an estate deeply in debt. And in order to keep his promise to repay all his father's creditors, in December of 1911, he sold the house to David Lee Taylor, who bought it as a Christmas present for his wife and their 6 sons. But in October 1912, Taylor died, and his widow sold the house that November to Marshall Dodge Wilbur and his wife Isadora, who who along with their 2 daughters were the longest and last family to make the Roby house a home.
When you were hiring Frank Lloyd Wright, you were expecting something different. You weren't expecting a Victorian house, and you weren't going to get that. And I think when you look at the other houses that would have been on the block, and you know, they're brick, they're traditional, they certainly don't look like the Roby house, and it must have been quite controversial, quite honestly, at the time when it was built. A prairie house is a long horizontal house, just like the prairies. You can really see how Mr. Wright was doing that, and he has the banding of the windows, long horizontal bricks. He uses Roman bricks that are twice as long, and then he has a natural color mortar horizontally between the bricks and red mortar vertically between the bricks, so that those red bands read very horizontal. Even on the roof, the tiles are tripled up rather than doubled up, so that they have much less exposure, so that again you get that horizontal lines. Even in the steel framing, when you look at the space here, this steel channels run all the way along the edge of those soffits. And that's so that you could still get this height in the center, but the roof framing could come down in a diagonal and you get a much shorter floor to ceiling height. In the interior, lots of windows looking out and very open feeling. In the interior, it also means that typically you would have a central hearth, but the rooms are open around it. You have those wide open spaces. And it really is that flow, and the flow especially from the interior to the exterior that Wright really wanted to highlight.
Wright wasn't just an architect. He didn't just design the house. He liked to design everything about it. He viewed the house as an integral whole. So the furniture, lighting, design, all of it was part of his design.
He would do everything from the plaster finish to the wood, to all the woodwork in it, and really had a comprehensive view of the interior and the exterior of the building.
So the house Wright delivered to the Robys was much more than walls and ceiling. In 1926, the Wilburs sold the house to the Chicago Theological Seminary, which remodeled it to provide student housing. The house escaped demolition in 1941 and again in 1957 when Frank Lloyd Wright returned to lobby for its preservation. William Zeckendorf, a friend of Wright's, bought and eventually donated the building to the University of Chicago, which used it as office space for the next 30 years.
This building went into decline when the roof was leaking and when water was getting into the building from the decks. These buildings need a lot of maintenance and a lot of ongoing maintenance.
So over the years, different pieces and different parts of the Roby house have been restored, maybe not to the 1920s or whenever it was built, time frame, not historically accurate.
In 1997, the Roby house was acquired by the Frank Lloyd Wright Preservation Trust.
We did an exterior restoration first, and mainly that was to stabilize the building, make sure water wasn't getting into the building anymore. Now the work we're doing is in the interior.
And the owner, Frank Lloyd Wright Trust's vision, is to bring that back to the original vision of Mr. Wright.
We're very lucky in Chicago. We have a lot of skilled craftsmen, and we can then rely on them.
Roby House and Frank Lloyd Wright, a lot of tradesmen know him, know of his work. A lot of them, especially woodworking guys, when Mike Cumming told me that I was going to be the superintendent job, I was excited.
Frank Lloyd Wright's son, John Lloyd Wright, created the cherished children's toys, Lincoln Logs.
You've got world-famous pieces here that are featured in magazines and textbooks, for architecture textbooks, here in our shop.
When you need a concrete contractor for your commercial project, you can't waste time waiting through countless unproven contractors who don't specialize in the job type you need or service your area. ConcreteIL.com lets you browse Northern Illinois' top contractors to find the perfect fit for your exact needs. You can filter our vetted list of contractors by both job type and location, and even request proposals directly through the site. Thinking commercial concrete? Think concreteil.com.
At Armstrong Ceiling and Wall Solutions, we take great pride in making a positive difference in the lives of people. With the broadest portfolio in the industry and the technical performance to back it up, you can design and install with confidence. Our ceiling construction expertise, training, and pre-engineered ceiling solutions make it easy for you to seamlessly transition from one end of the building to the other. Improve construction efficiencies and keep every job on time, on budget, and on the mark with Armstrong Ceiling and Wall Solutions. Faster, easier, better.
The Frank Lloyd Wright Trust restoration of the Roby House interior showcases how preserving the works of a master requires the skills of some masterful tradespeople.
The Roby House was finished in 1909, and that's really our restoration target date. So that is the last time the architect, the builder, and the owner were really here in the building. We do very detailed research on what was there in 1909. And we don't restore to what we think looks good. We restore to what was there in 1909. The only exception to that would be something where it isn't allowed anymore. We're not going to take the lead paint and put it back on the walls, that type of thing. When you look at just the construction drawings, it's obvious that all architects at that time had to work very closely with the craftsmen.
Sculptors, painters, all of them were part of his vision, and they worked together as a team.
As architects now, we detail everything, and we have firm contracts and things like that. Whereas at the turn of the century, a lot more of it was a handshake, an agreement, working with someone that you work with, and working out the fine details in the field.
We have an amazing restoration team.
It's an adventure, you know. Something like this you don't get to work on every day.
We are literally taking that house apart. We have a GPS grid for the house.
Bernhardt Woodworking came in. They cataloged everything, marked on the blueprints where each piece of wood came from.
Every piece is marked with a Dremel tool as it comes out of the space to make sure that we're documenting where that piece came from.
Thousands and thousands of pieces, and that alone is a very large challenge.
You've got world-famous pieces here that are featured in magazines and textbooks, for architecture textbooks, here in our shop.
We hire only the best, and if our trainees or our apprentices and stuff, we bring them up in the way that we feel they need to be to rise to these challenges that we bring in, like the Roby House.
There is a great reverence that you have to have in approaching it, and making sure that vision, you're not changing that vision. We work in conjunction with the architect to see what we can save, what we can't. Sometimes you have to restore and replace pieces. You want to make sure you maintain the same character.
Harbo Architects and myself go up there, we look at the wood, determine whether it matches our control sample, and then review the whole room before it comes back and gets reinstalled.
Once everything's done, the woodwork will be the last thing that goes back in, so that way it doesn't get touched up with paint or anything like that. Same thing. We're talking probably 6-8 guys that's going to be here probably for 2 to 3 weeks just reinstalling it.
And all that custom woodwork surrounds some very custom plaster.
The plaster work that Wright did at the Roby House involves layers and layers of plaster.
When we repair plaster on the walls, we have to strip it down to the bare plaster, and the paint that was put on the wall is a very thin paint finish over plaster. So not only do we have to match the color of the paint, we have to match the color of the plaster, the mud that's in that plaster, and the aggregate, both in size and color, because it shows through.
We have to try to match new texture that sits right next to the existing textures. You got to figure out, the guy that put it on, was he left-handed or right-handed, to get the proper swirls and everything.
So that when you paint it, you actually see that background material.
These are samples that we worked on in the beginning. We went through quite a few. As you can see, there's all kinds of finishes on this house.
The plasters had probably done, 15, 20 samples before the architect says, yeah, you finally got it.
What we're doing now is we're trying to expose the black aggregate on the finish. The process is we use a green flow. We dip it into a bucket of water. We wet the finish. After that, we use a scrubber and we go along the texture lines to not to damage the finish.
But between each of those layers, you need to let it dry. So it takes weeks and weeks just to get one wall of plaster up.
You know, it's time consuming, but, you know, to preserve history essentially for this house, you know, it's got to be done right.
It was an honor to hear the news that I was going to be working at this project, so it's been great. This is only phase 1, so I'm really looking forward to continue on phase 2.
Well, our hope is when you, at the end of the year, when you walk into here and you see this living room and dining room especially, because it really was a dramatic space, that it will be like you've stepped back in time, that you walked back in and you saw the building as the Robies would have when they walked in December of 1909.
They've been patient, they've been great. The reason it's so exciting now is that we finally get to deliver on something we started.
The all-new Skill Saw heavy-duty worm drive table saw with stand. The world's only full-size table saw with worm drive gearing. Delivering unmatched durability, unwavering power, and unrivaled torque. So you get better results. Faster. Nothing compares to worm drive gearing. Skill Saw. Stay true.
No matter the challenge you're facing on your job site, rely on Ardex for a system of solutions. Leading the way in the tiling and flooring industry, Ardex has followed its vision to be the leader of specialty building materials for 40 years. When you require exceptional performance, when you need trusted solutions, Ardex is up for the challenge.
Meet the new family of Blaze laser measures from Bosch. Go ahead, turn it on and start measuring. It's that simple. The Blaze family offers a wide range of functions to tackle any measuring job. Extend your reach with accuracy up to 1/16 of an inch. With Bluetooth-enabled devices, easily transfer measurements to your smartphone or tablet with free Bosch apps. Reach farther, work faster, and stay accurate with the Bosch Blaze family of laser measures. Measure on.
Rob North is a skilled journeyman carpenter and a Marine vet.
We are so proud to have Rob on our team, and I know how important this next story is to him.
Thank you, guys. Last season, we met a truly special couple. United States Marine Corporal Kyle Moser was wounded while serving his country and lost the use of his legs. In the aftermath of his injury, Kyle and his wife Alex continue to show us all what true strength looks like. Working with Jared Allen's Homes for Wounded Warriors, the Carpenters Union is building a truly functional home for the Mosers, and the work has begun in earnest.
Anytime you want to build on or near a wetland, there's a big permit process, lengthy. You got to get the Army Corps involved and dot all your I's and cross all your T's and make sure that legally everything's in order, or it can be a nightmare on the backside. Once you actually get the permits, the process of the tree removal goes pretty fast.
We've been dealing with this since about October 2016, so it's been a long time.
When I first started, I said, listen, there's going to be hiccups, there's going to be issues. It took me 3 years to build my house in Arizona when we built it.
We've overcome a number of different hurdles with the design elements of the project.
I'm pretty sure since we had gotten chosen, there's been like 3 or 4 different recipients, and 2 of them, I think, have already received their home.
They've been patient, they've been great. The reason it's so exciting now is that we finally get to deliver on something we started.
And we're almost to that point of getting a machine on site and getting a hole dug.
I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your day to come celebrate this special moment with us today. This day has been a long time in the making. We've probably got more man hours on this job before we've broken ground on any project that we've handed over the keys.
We're excited. I think the community's been very receptive. Obviously a beautiful community out here, and being able to deliver this home to them is going to be awesome.
These projects are only done with the help and support of others, and it's always very overwhelming to see communities get behind these projects and help.
Without the support and the donations, whether it's time, money, materials, this would just be a dream. I'd be on a soapbox preached on a corner. Getting the builders, the contractors, architects, the community, the donors, to actually lay eyes on the site where their money is going, to be able to talk with Alex, and they've all got to know Alex and Kyle over the years. But being able to get to talk to Alex and Kyle and get to know them, and you get to see where your dollars are going. You get to see where those dollars are going, and they get to see who's giving them.
Well, what we found is, with all the projects that we've done, is the sense of independence the veterans get from having their own home. Home ownership is a big part of growing as an adult and into contributing to society.
We've been married for almost 8 years now, and I'm finishing up school. We're kind of getting into that life stage where we're ready to, start having a family. And I think that living in a home that is accessible is very important.
It's been a long time coming, as Alex has said, and it's finally here, it's arrived, and we hope to have this closed in and you in as soon as possible. So that's our mission right now.
The Carpenters Union has been such a blessing for us because it's allowed us to give us an infrastructure to work nationally.
We have 8 projects in 8 states right now, and I'm happy to say that the Carpenters Union, the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America, have joined with us and made us their official foundation, and they're building all of our homes all over the country, which allows us to build wherever a veteran is in need. We can go and we can build the home.
It just really makes it easy when you can talk to one person in each region, and it connects it, and you get the right people on the job from the beginning. And then you have, especially in a project like this, where there has been, so many hurdles, is that you have people that are connected to the community.
They can pick up a phone. We can go ahead and plug in our contractors and our architects, the design professionals.
When him and I discussed the project, it was almost immediate. We were on board. RB Construction was on board to do this. We just think it's a great way for us to show support.
They tell us where they live. I call the union. They give me a local. I call them. We build a home. It's a great relationship.
That's all for this episode of Built to Last. We'll see you next time.
Remember to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
On behalf of the Built to Last family, we want to extend our gratitude to those who serve and encourage everyone to try to serve them in return.